Yo, what is up, everybody? Your boy Esco, back again with another short horror story for you guys. This one is titled The Incident, written by J. King. Remember that all properties and rights belong to their respective authors, so please use the links in the description below. Show love and support to them. Like, comment, and subscribe. Dear Sir, I won't pretend to feel anything other than a deep dread at the receipt of your letter. How you came by my name and of my involvement in the mentioned incident causes me a great deal of consternation, considering the effort I have made over the years to hide my presence at the event. I have heard some tales of you, your position, and capabilities, and therefore find myself obliged to believe that you could easily follow through on your not-so-veiled threats. Though I'll admit that there's not much that could frighten me after that day. As you correctly stated, I was indeed in Versailles when the hikers passed through. After some trouble with the local government in my hometown, I was spending time on the down low, as I understand the expression is. I had not met the group before, but we had the chance to meet during the purchasing of food, and I found them friendly and forthcoming. And I'll admit that their little expedition seemed an enjoyable one to me, though I had not their experience climbing and mountaineering. My hesitation on whether to join them or not originally led me to start out alone on my own journey on a somewhat parallel route, though with a different destination. But I found myself oddly drawn to that intriguingly determined little group, and so eventually changed my mind and my path. They had taken the first part of their journey quite easily, and I was able to catch up with them in the highland area. Around, I believe, the 31st, after Uden had already departed the expedition due to injury. The lone female member of the group, Mila, seemed pleased to have more female company, and the group as a whole welcomed me as a friend. It welcomed my heart. After all, I could have no idea what has to come. The first sign that the journey would not be what we hoped for was the worsening weather conditions. Sharp snowstorms had destroyed our visibility. As a less experienced hiker, I found this quite disconcerting, but the rest of the group were made of sturdier stuff and were not so fazed, even when it transpired that we had become a little lost and had deviated from our path, finding ourselves towards the top of Koalat. They merely decided that we should set up camp, Igor stating that it would be a good practice of slope camping, not wanting to lose the height we had conquered. Oh, that we had been more cautious, been less eager. Despite the presence of women in the group, we shared one tent between the 10 of us, practically being far more important than circumstances and propriety. It was actually Mila that woke up first thing at night. Her movement awakened me. Vita, can you hear that? In the silence of the night, for several moments, all I could hear was the gentle breathing of our companions. And then there was a crunch of snow outside. The sharp noise like a heavy breath of a large animal. A bear, perhaps. Though we were aware nothing like that lived in the area, Mila and I froze. Our eyes locked together, and then she reached over and gripped Igor's arm. His eyes opened blearily and focused on us, and I saw his expression grow puzzled as he watched me press a finger on my lips. He sat up carefully and stared at us, a question on his face. In answer, I just pointed to where the sound seemed to be coming from. It was closer now, and whatever it was seemed to have its face pressed to the sides of the tent, as I could hear it sniffing along the bottom of the material. I was aware of the other members of the group awakening, slowly sitting up, their bodies still and silent, as they heard the thing outside investigating us. I don't know what we all felt at that moment. Some fear, certainly, or perhaps not terror. A large animal does not necessarily mean a predator after all, and our tent was sturdy in any case. I caught Igor's eye, and his calmness soothed me. The thing outside was moving around towards the front of the tent, towards the opening that we believed to be securely tied. And then the noise. Oh God, the noise. I can't describe it fully. Something like a scream, but furious. Somehow high-pitched and shrieking, and yet with some lower rumble of bass that seemed to make the ground shake beneath us. There were cries of fear within the group, and we grasped at each other. At my side, and absolutely terrified, Yuri snatched his knife out of his bag and slashed it through the side of the tent. The slit he made was easily big enough for him to fit through, and he fled out of it, followed quickly by Gregory. As the thing outside pushed against the front of the tent, the rest of us surged forward towards this escape route, briefly bottlenecking while behind us that awful roar grew louder, and then we were free and fleeing down the slopes towards the nearest shelter we could find. I don't know how long we ran, freezing, terrified, pursued by that creature, before we saw the woods ahead of us barreled in. We scrambled into bushes and up trees, breathless and trying to make each other out of the darkness, as well as see if the thing had followed. There was silence around us, and I think we all dared to hope that we had escaped. But whatever elation could have been in store for us was quickly dashed by the realization of our situation. We were outside, the freezing cold, most of us without shoes even, and with no way to find our way back in the dark to our belongings. I'm not sure how long we cowered there before we realized that we were going to have to at least attempt to return back the way we came. Gregory and Yuri were already beginning to become to the first signs of hypothermia. I heard Zenaida shushing Yuri, who was shaking violently and hissing about his bare feet. They were hushed discussions of starting a fire, but I think we were scared that it would bring the creature back to us. Igor made the decision that the rest of us would stay in the woods, whilst he, Zenaida, and Rustam would attempt a return to the tent to fetch clothing and provisions. They left soon after. We never saw them again. After several hours, Nikolai urged us to start at least a small fire. We didn't want to lose Yuri and Gregory, who were huddled at the bottom of the pine, deathly pale. Yuri had already tried to remove his clothes once. Mila had managed to stop him. Semyon agreed, and we collected firewood and attempted a blaze. Though, without much luck, they were really managing more than a sputtering failure. And after Yuri suddenly jerked his leg, knocking the fire out, singeing his trousers in the process, despite the bitter weather, we gave up. But you have to be practical in these circumstances. You see, so when Yuri and Gregory were seen not to need them anymore, we took their clothing. Their troubles were over. It was Alexander who first stated that he did not believe that Igor and the others would be returning, and that if we wanted to survive this, we would need to set out on our own. Those of us that remained, myself, Mila, Nikolai, Semyon, had to agree. We were on our own. We set out as carefully and quietly as we could, thinking to follow in the footsteps of Igor and the others and make our way back to the tent. We stayed close together, eyes wide and staring out into the darkness. That we had already lost our way only became apparent when moonlight burst out from behind a cloud and showed down on a gaping ravine, and none of us could remember our flight down from the tent to relative safety. "Do we turn back?" whispered Alexander to the rest of us. But before any of us could answer, Nikolai glanced behind us and let out an awful cry. I don't believe the rest of us looked to see what he had seen. We had a good idea after all, but instead just ran as fast as we could away from it. In the panic, Nikolai, terrified by what he had just seen, stumbled the wrong way, and I saw him disappear over the nearby edge. Mila screamed at that and immediately changed her course to a path that led towards the ravine and down, perhaps, hoping that we could somehow save him. Semyon, Alexander, and I followed her. There was nowhere to hide up there, after all. We ran and slipped our way down to the creek at the bottom, but there was no time to look for Nikolai. The creature had followed us. We could hear its fast footsteps and its grumbling growl. I tried to sneak over a look, and as I ran, I could only make out a shadowy shape, darkness. Our group found itself splitting up, each trying to make a different cover. I saw Mila make for a group of boulders, while I lunged for a large shrub growing stumbly by the freezing water. I didn't see it at the time where Alexander went. Once hidden, I turned to see if the creature had seen me. Might perhaps even now be bearing down on me, but it was not. Simeon had slipped in the water and was trying to drag himself away. I could hear his whimpering cries from where I hid. I could also see the creature for the first time. It was tall and thin, human-like, I guess, but wrong in too many ways. In the moonlight, I could make out unnaturally long limbs, jutting bones. His face wasn't too clear, though I thought I could make out dark holes where his eyes and mouth might be. It was bearing down on Simeon, who had twisted around to face his attacker. Brave man. The thing leaned down towards him and screamed. The noise was worse than before, again with that strange split of high and low resonance. With wide eyes, I saw Simeon's face contort in pain, and then I looked away, squeezing my eyes shut. I heard a dull crack, like the crunch of bones, and then silence. I peered out. Simeon was slumped back in the water, dead, I had no doubt. The thing was standing where I had seen it last, its back to me. It was unnaturally still, like a statue. I glanced over to the boulders where I had seen Mila and saw her peeping out as I was, her eyes on the monster. I realized immediately that she intended to run. Her cover was not as good as mine, and it was apparent to her, as to me, that if the creature turned her way, he would not be hidden. He moved carefully back. Whether the creature had supernatural hearing or some other unknown sense, it turned immediately. Those dark holes of eyes seeking the out. He screamed and turned to run. But good God, it moved so fast, those freakish limbs eating up the ground between them. Spidery hands grabbing her arms and pulling her up in the air. For a second, it just stared at her face as she writhed in its grip, and then it gave its banshee wail. This time, I didn't look away, though sheer terror had purged much of what I saw from my mind. But before I fainted, I remember seeing her eyes and how they poured down her face. How I survived until morning, I'll never know. Though 3 fingers and most of my toes were the price I paid to the cold. I was luckier though than Alexander, who I found further down the creek, frozen, face down in the water, as it lapped gently against him. Of the creature, there was no sign. I made no attempt to return to the tent and would have likely perished like my companions had I had not eventually stumbled upon a somewhat shocked tribe of Mansi, who saved my life and to whom I am forever indebted. Until today, I have never shared this story. My status as a fugitive from the law would have made me unwilling to divulge my involvement, even if the story had not been so unbelievable. The government so eager to cover up what aspects of it as they could. Though mostly it is because I do not wish to relive it, I have such nightmares as it is, of the creature, of Mila's face, and of the details I learned later from the investigation. The families don't need to know what truly occurred. Let them believe it was just an unfortunate accident. I know enough of you, sir, to have no reason to believe in your goodness, but I am an old woman now who is not likely to see many more summers. If I could prevail on you to keep this account hidden until I am no longer around to confirm or deny it, then you would be doing me great kindness. Let the world go on without knowing there was a 10th member of that team. It has passed into legend without me. Let the dead rest, sir. Though from what I know of you, I fear my pleas fall on deaf ears. Yours, Elizaveta Okolova. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of our story.